All right.
Recording in progress.
There you go.
Okay. Cool.
Hey guys, and welcome to pseudo Betwixt the Books. I'm sure you're already aware that the person sharing the screen with me today is not Michaela.
I'm not Michaela.
Not Michaela. So Erica is my best friend at work and in life in general. Although not at work soon. Spoiler alert. Because I'm changing jobs. But in other news that is more relevant to this, we decided to do a 8-book read along together of the entire Bridgerton series. And when we started,
Storygraph gave us that utility for read-alongs right for the 8th book.
Yes. Michaela and I have talked about storygraph.com and so many other videos, but one of their newer features is the ability to buddy read, and like you can leave comments as you buddy read, but like they're hidden from the other person until they reach that part of the book. It's so good, guys. Again, Storygraph, so much better than Goodreads. Go use it. But
not a sponsor.
Yeah, not a sponsor, because Storygraph is not owned by Amazon and, you know, can pay for itself. It's very nice. It's not full of ads.
Yeah.
I logged into Goodreads the other day and it was like the book of the year ad was like this big on my screen. And I was like, guys, where even is Goodreads?
Anyway. I have barely opened Goodreads in the last year. Like since you told me Storygraph.
Yeah, I've still been using it tentatively, but yeah. Mm-hmm. But anyway, we did it because, you know, I mean, the Netflix TV show, you know, kind of a thing. And it's been a while for me since I've dedicated some time to reading historical romance. But it sounded like a good time. And then, whoo boy, did we end up with thoughts and feelings on these books. So general structure for this is we're going to kind of go through all 8 books, give you a brief synopsis if you haven't read them and our thoughts, and then we're going to actually, like, you know, talk about them. So Erica, is there anything you want to say to introduce yourself past my great and planned introduction?
I mean, like, this is just something we did on a whim, and it was a lot of fun. They can be very silly books, very especially for you, frustrating books, but no, yeah, I mostly work in IT and stuff, and I've been reading all my life, but I've been trying to read more since becoming a librarian so that I can, you know, have more of a sense of things that are good and things that are bad. And these just run the gamut, so.
Oh boy, don't they. And I think for me, I should say up front that I watched the Netflix show before we read the first book.
I did too.
Yeah, so that was...
You had watched it first. You were messaging me that you had watched it, and I was just like, what the hell is this Bridgerton thing? And then, like, then I was watching a Last Week Tonight with John Oliver, where he was saying something was like Bridgerton. There's more semen in the bed sheets than you think there would be. Because, you know, that was what, beginning of year 2 of the pandemic. So yeah, like, where everyone's still stuck in, and that was the Tiger King for 2021 was Bridgerton. So then I was just like, okay, well, I have to, what the hell is John Oliver talking about? I have to witness this. And like, the show was fine. It wasn't anything special. I know this is kind of delaying our topic of getting actually into the books, but the biggest thing about the Netflix show that threw me off was all of the modern songs that had like orchestral like chamber music renditions.
All of a sudden the Vitamin String Quartet is playing the top hits.
There was like a Taylor Swift song in there, I think. I can't remember which one it was. But that was so distracting. But yeah, no, it was fine.
I mean, I think one of the things that excited me most about Bridgerton as someone who's been reading a lot of romance lately is just that, like, kind of like the way that I felt about The Witcher and the way that I felt about Game of Thrones, which is that these are some genres that are not often taken very seriously if they are ever made into media, like TV shows or movies, or they're done with like really low production values. Because when people think of romance novels made into movies, you think of like the Hallmark Channel. And yeah, some of them are that silly. But I was like, oh my gosh, this is a romance novel being made into a series with like a high production value. And that was really exciting. And I think that the show gave me some unrealistic expectations about what the books would be.
Yeah, that's fair. Although to be fair, there were aspects that were better. There were some aspects, mostly characterization, that were better in the books than they were in the show, but we'll get to that.
Yeah. Well, I think just first of all, so obviously the show is called Bridgerton, but the first book is called The Duke and I. And if you have not seen the show or watched the book, real quick synopsis is that the Bridgerton family, there's a mom as matriarch. Their dad has died a while ago, and she has 8 kids that she has named in alphabetical order to help you remember, I guess. But the first book is actually about the oldest daughter. Her name is Daphne, and her trying to go out into the world and make a match when she has 3 older brothers just totally like on her case. And so she ends up doing the fake relationship trope with a duke who is being like just descended upon by society mamas, and he's like, oh god, make them stop. And she's trying to make herself look like a very desirable match, and so them pretending to court works for both of them. But of course, along the way, they develop feelings, as one does. And so they end up in a compromising situation. They get married, and even more shenanigans happen after they're married, which we'll talk about, I'm sure, in depth. But that was, I mean, in terms of the like plot line for a novel, I was like, oh, we're going past the marriage bit. Okay. That was nice, I guess.
And I mean, that kind of a little bit surprisingly to me is kind of the trend for most of these, that they do go past the marriage bit. You were saying it's just like, oh, because they have to get caught in a scandalous situation, be forced to wed, and then fall in love through the marriage process, which to me is just kind of like, this feels like overkill. But because usually by the time they get married in these books, like they know they're in love with each other, but they're just like having a hard time admitting it, or some situation that they're facing makes them not feel comfortable doing anything about it, or something like that. But then they where am I going with this? I don't even know.
Well, I was
first book was kind of boring.
Yeah. So I mean, I feel like the TV show oversold me on the way the characters would be in this one. Because Roger John Page, I think that's his name, who plays Simon the Duke in this story, I mean, he just plays that character really, really well. And I think one of the things that made the TV show was like the nonverbal communication between him and the woman who plays Daphne, whose name I forget. They do in the book, I think, have more opportunity for banter, which was nice. There was a much more elongated getting to know you period, where I did get, I think, maybe more of a sense that they were becoming friends, as opposed to, like, I think in the TV show they have like that one ball where they're like, ooh, we like to dance together.
I mean, they have a fair amount of time, and that's what I was going to say, is because I feel like for the show they actually drew it out more for the show, because I mean, you also have the storyline of the Featheringtons in there,
Oh, that's true.
which like is not in not in the first book. You have the storyline for like the queen in there for some reason. And she is not in any of these books. Like they never appear before the queen at any point. So like that was kind of like an interesting choice to throw in there. I don't know if they're just trying to make that for the show. It's just kind of like giving it grounding for the reason why there are so many different races mingling in London at the time. Because Julia Quinn certainly didn't have that in mind, but
no, Julia Quinn's books are white.
Yes, very much so. And so kind of having that, I don't know if they're just kind of using the queen as a vehicle to kind of explain that, because I think that that's kind of how they're explaining that, even though they don't really need to. But yeah, I thought that a lot of the stuff in the show was drawn out, because like there's this whole misdirect of the prince sideline or whatever, like is Daphne going to marry this prince and everything like that. That's not in the book. There's a lot of stuff that's not in the book that's in the show.
I guess I
think maybe that's kind of what overrides all that conversation topics, why it doesn't feel like there's as much time for them to develop their relationship, because the show is too busy focusing on everybody else in the show too. I mean, Benedict has his storyline, Eloise has her storyline. Like there's so much in the show.
Yeah. I took that as like, it's a trope in romance novels that you kind of understand that like, the first book will focus on the first couple and everyone else is kind of incidental. You only have to care about them enough to read the next book. But I do feel like there was more of an understanding in the show that like, if they don't get you to care about a larger world, you might not come back for season 2, because everybody's like so upset that like Simon's not going to be in season 2, but like there's no reason for him to be there. And so you had to be able to connect with other characters to come back for.
I mean, like now that I've read the second book, he does have a reason for a brief cameo. I don't know if they ever said if he's going to or not, but
no,
because that's the best scene in the second book. Come
on. I mean, now he's such a big deal. I don't know, maybe he's too expensive.
Yeah. That's fair.
But I think, just again, to kind of set the stage for something I think is going to come up in our larger discussion, is something that is problematic in the book and is still problematic in the show, because there was really no way of getting around this. So first of all, if you didn't already guess, these books are explicit romance content. And some of the sex scenes or the sexual content is a bit squicky. It is a bit weird.
And there's of course, the typical argument to be had of, oh, it's the early 1800s, the rules weren't the same, but like you're still writing for a modern audience, so that excuse doesn't really hold as much water as you might think it could.
Yeah. So the big thing, of course, in the first book, which I think is definitely one of the squickiest books, and then again, like I said, shows up in the show, is that Simon the Duke has this thing where he told his father, who he hates, that he will not continue the ducal line. So when he marries Daphne, he is like, well, we can't have kids, but he doesn't tell her that. He just pulls out every time. And because Daphne has never had sex with anyone else, she's like, this is what happens, until, in various ways in the show and the book, she finds out that, that he's doing that on purpose and that that's not normal.
That he is quite fertile, in fact.
Yes. So she basically, in the book, I believe she gets him drunk, correct? Or like there's alcohol
he
involved.
Just is drunk, because I think that I think that they had a fight or something, and he came back drunk, if I remember correctly.
So, and she has sex with him, and he moderately unwillingly comes inside her, and then in the show they tried to say like, well, he could have stopped it, but like she's writing him, and he does at one point explicitly say no. And I mean, again, people are like, well, he could have thrown her off, he's stronger, whatever. It is still aggressively uncomfortable,
Yeah.
especially because
Yeah.
the word no is used.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that was, I think, something. Thankfully, I had read a review of the book, I think, so I knew it was coming in the show, but it was worse in the book.
Yeah.
And it was weird.
Yeah. And they focus on the after part of it too, more in the book, I feel. Because I if I remember correctly, I don't think they let kind of like as much time pass before the issue gets resolved in the show, because basically it's just Daphne wants to be pregnant and then they're just kind of waiting to see if she's pregnant or not.
Yeah.
So
But it's fine.
yeah.
Then Simon gets over it and they all live happily ever after.
And have like way too many kids.
Yeah. So again, we'll talk a little bit more about these books and their relationship with sex later. But we should probably move on to honestly, because of that, I was like, do I want to keep reading this series? And that's a hilarious thing to have said, because The Duke and I is followed by Anthony's story, The Viscount Who Loved Me. Anthony, with the A name, is the oldest Bridgerton child, and of course the first boy. So after his father died, he's been the Viscount Bridgerton for a really long time, but he's never married. He's been off being a rake and a very, drinking, gambling, whatever. And his mom, Violet, is like, listen, it is time for you to settle down. And Anthony finally realizes, okay, for like my family, I need to do this. And he picks out this like perfect society woman.
Because I think it's also important to note that because his dad died young, he has sworn to marry somebody who he doesn't love, so that he doesn't feel bad about possibly dying on her at a young age.
Fair. The dad also died by a bee sting.
Yeah, but like so I think that that's also important to know, because that is a different conclusion than he comes to in the show. He comes to the I won't marry for love. And I mean, they'll probably bring the dad storyline into it. We already know that there's a dad actor being cast for it. But he in the show, he comes by it because he's been like sleeping with this one woman fairly consistently. And then she, says, no, you'll never marry me because I'm not a society woman. So she basically breaks up with him, and he's just like, oh, my life is ruined. I'll never marry for love. So that's how we're going into season 2 of Bridgerton, which, as of recording this, has not aired yet. Will not air for another month.
Yeah. So he picks out this girl, and she is, she's a great character, actually, but like obviously is not anything that Anthony actually wants, which is, why he picks her by design. But she comes with this older cousin named Kate.
Sister. Half sister, I think, isn't it? I think it's half sister.
Half sister?
Or something like that.
They're always cousins, so I always feel like it's cousins. Anyway, older relation.
Maybe it is. I don't know.
Named Kate. They are definitely not related entirely by blood. That's either a half sister
or it's stepsister or stepsister. Yeah.
Yeah, because there's like a reason why Kate thinks that she's going to be a spinster, and it's the younger girl who's going to go off and make the great marriage.
Yeah, because the mom isn't Kate's mom.
Yeah. So she is like, I don't think Mr. Bridgerton is good enough for this younger girl, sister, cousin, whatever, who she loves very much. Yeah, he's a rake, and this younger girl is impressionable, and this is a terrible idea. So she starts like kind of fighting Anthony about this and just trying to like really get in his way. And of course her fire, they start to have a thing. And I mean, I think maybe we can just give this away right now. I think we both agree that this is probably the best book in the series.
Yeah.
We're very
Absolutely.
excited for season 2.
I mean, I will say that most of the Bridgerton guys are characterized pretty damn similarly. Like there's like different like teeny adjustments for each one, but for the most part they're all, the perfect guy. They're charming, they know exactly what to say, they're a little bit mischievous, but they're also protective and loving and everything like that. Anthony's kind of little adjustment is that he's more stern because he is the Viscount. He does have this responsibility on his shoulders for a while, but still I think that Kate is mostly different from the rest of the women. Again, a lot of the women a lot of the male characters, all the female characters kind of run together, but Kate does kind of stand out because of just how fierce she is, how really virulent she is, at some points. And it's nice to see those two aspects kind of playing off of each other in a way that you get plenty of witty banter throughout these books, but it's not really like this in the same way because first of all, it's the first time that we get this level because Daphne was such a vanilla character, and without having the actor to look at and like swoon for, it's just like not really the same reading about Simon.
Well, and I think though
And
too, like Daphne's entire purpose was to fit in and to make the match and be this. And Kate has already decided this is not going to be like, I'm going to die a spinster. So like she's basically, I think that kind of helps her be different. But yeah, I think I'm just like looking at the list, and I think because we'll talk about this later, but in a way that like Eloise is in the show, like Kate is like very just like, bugger all society. I'm just gonna.
I think what's interesting about her is that she's not quite like Eloise in that way, because she's really quick-witted, she's really strong-willed, but she's not like unappreciative of society. Like she fits in society. She just kind of like makes that attitude work for her while still being like a perfectly fashionable young woman in that society. Whereas like Eloise and Hyacinth are more like, fuck all y'all in society, I don't care, like I'm just here to do me and that's it. Where she's just kind of like, I'm trying to care for my sister by making sure that she doesn't have this bad match, or this match that I feel could be bad. So it's nice to see somebody like that who's kind of like, this society does kind of stink, but I'm making it work for me.
Yeah. I also think too, like the idea that she kind of had to like, and again, this is very similar to, Simon's story too, but Anthony has to be like, dragged into love. And he's just like so emotionally like incompetent. He's just like, I can't go near this. Like, this is weird. Like I need to want the person I don't want, for my safety, for her safety. And then just constantly getting these glimpses into that it doesn't have to be that way.
And I think that also makes him more compelling than Simon too, because it's a fully internal struggle. And like, I know that Simon's is like kind of internal, but his is just kind of like a grudge match against the image of his father that he has in his head. I mean, obviously his father was shit, but Anthony's father wasn't, it's this deep rooted fear for him. It's not just like, oh, I got mad at my dad, so I can't have kids, where it's like, I mean, that's just actively like denying happiness for yourself. Whereas for Anthony, he's scared to have happiness because he's worried about losing it all.
Yeah.
So I think that makes him a lot more compelling than Simon, like in that way anyways.
Yeah.
I don't know if the actor will be more compelling than Simon's actor, but we'll see.
To find out. I mean, honestly, as long as Kate is like an absolute rapier, I'm just gonna be like, I'm fine. Just continue.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was also one that I don't really remember any of the sex scenes making me go, "Wah." um
There was like a little bit of weirdness because she had this weird like virgin fear.
oh my god, that was
Um
that one. That's right.
yeah.
That's
So
right.
that was like, I remember you messaging me about that and being like, why is this? Why is this? And I was just like,
Right,
you've read
because
more
it
of these
seemed
than I have.
so it seemed just especially so incongruous because Kate is so, and I don't know, was this like an attempt to like humanize her? I don't like, because she's like so fearless
She
normally.
well, but she does have the fear though, because she has that fear of thunder. Like she
Oh,
has
that's
that
right.
fear of storms that I think humanizes her. So like, I don't, maybe it's
I
just
think I
because
just
she's
deleted
been
that because I cannot tell you how many romance heroines suddenly become very afraid of thunderstorms when they need a good cuddle to move the plot along.
um but I think that one served reasonably well. Because then that was like Anthony seeing her vulnerable too.
Yeah.
But I think this virgin fear thing is probably their attempt to kind of like give Anthony the upper hand at one point, to have like more knowledge of something because she's so smart. They're always like even footing, if not her winning. So maybe
Yeah.
this was
I
just
mean,
their attempt to be like, oh no, woman, stay down.
it's also just a historical romance, and these always, like,
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, like, the guy has been a rake for a while and she's the sweet innocent virgin no matter how old she is. Like, that's just like
Yeah.
always that setup. So I swear sometimes I just delete that information because I'm like, nah, I've read this 165,000 times. I
Yeah.
don't know why this is what is exciting in this. It's, oh, I'm a virgin. Okay, whatever, you do you.
Yeah.
Anyway,
We know. We know.
we know.
Stop. We know.
We know. This is the convention of the time. We know. Thank
Yeah. Yeah.
you. Which I think, so if you want to move on to the book 3 to keep
Hmm.
plugging along, the third book is Benedict's story, and it's called An Offer from a Gentleman. And I I read these on my phone, so this did not occur to me until Erica said it. But literally, even the the cover is like a slipper on the front of it, but Erica was the first person to say, oh my goodness, it was just Bridgerton Cinderella, which I think kind of tells you everything you need to know about this plot.
Just
The
sexy Cinderella. That's it.
Sexy Cinderella, yeah. So I just didn't realize they had like sold it so hard with like the cover until I saw it, and I was
I
like,
didn't even think
oh
about that either.
yeah.
Uh, like
But
from the plot, because like, seeing the woman across the ball and not being able to find her again. I'm just like, oh, this is sexy Cinderella. I didn't even think about this slipper on the front.
because if you're reading it online, like it's not like you close the book in it, you have to look at it every time, it just pick it up.
Yeah.
But
And I've been getting like the new covers where it's just like the person on it,
oh yeah, no, this is
or
the
like
older
the
cover.
couple on it or something. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, the story behind this is that the girl's name is Sophie, and she is the illegitimate daughter of an earl. And after that earl has died, she is mistreated by her stepmom and step
And
siblings.
two step siblings.
Yeah. So again, this is like it's a 1-for-1. Benedict sees Sophie at a party, tries to find her. In a slightly, I guess, twist from the tale, Sophie ends up being kicked out of her stepmother's house, and so she has to find work. She has no inheritance, and she ends up employed at the Bridgerton house by Benedict's mom, Violet.
And I will note that the important thing to know about the ball too is that Sophie knows Benedict's name, or she at least knows that he's a
Mm.
Bridgerton. And because I think he was walking around without a mask. She never took her mask off, so he doesn't know who she is. He has no idea who this mystery woman is, but she knows who he is this whole time.
Yeah. Which I think is like the last time Sophie has the upper hand in this relationship. Because, obviously Benedict gets her employed by his mom. And then, I mean, I think this book started to just make me uncomfortable because Benedict just really starts pressuring Sophie into a relationship that she is not comfortable with. Like,
I mean, so her being the illegitimate child of somebody, so they start to fall in love after Benedict gets sick, and she kind of helps take care of him. All he knows is that she's some sort of maid or something, but they're spending so much time together, they are starting to fall for each other. And while they're still kind of at Benedict's cottage, which I believe is called
my cottage.
It's so stupid. So he basically starts asking her to be his mistress because they can't get married, basically, because she doesn't want him to lose his status because he married a maid. And so he's just like, be my mistress, be my mistress. And she's just like, no, because I am the child of a mistress. It sucks for everyone. So leave me alone, please. I will live with my broken heart for not marrying you. But
Yeah. I mean, I think,
yeah.
I mean, that on its own, maybe I could have worked with, but especially after like she's unemployed by his mom and he's just
Mhm.
like showing up and like it, because they make a very clear point to have the Bridgerton women be very welcoming to Sophie. And
Mhm.
this is also an environment that she's never had that, you know, because she's been mistreated by her step family for so long. Um, and so, I mean, clearly that's a setup of like, oh, they're definitely going to welcome you into the family, Sophie. But from Sophie's point of view, you know, she is convinced that if she starts something with Benedict, that she'll lose the respect and potentially even her job that
Mhm.
she has really come to love with the Bridgerton women who are still in the house, which is all of them but Daphne.
Yeah.
So it was just like, I don't, and I also, I'm sorry, just like the power imbalance that is just like a really big thing, just even in contemporary romance of like, you know, the guy who is his, like her boss. It's always
Mhm.
the guy who is the boss, really, and she's not. And like just the lack of dude understanding that, like, you know, there will be no consequences for Benedict,
Yeah.
but there could be consequences for Sophie.
And this is another one too in this kind of there's somewhat of a trend in these of at some point like there's not just a fight, it's just like the guy getting really mad and yelling at the girl. I feel like that happens at least once in most if not all of these. I can't think of a specific one for Anthony, but this is the stupidest one to me because like when there's a scene where Sophie has on a little she has on a blindfold because she's playing hide and seek with like Gregory and Hyacinth or something, and Benedict walks in and he's just like, oh god, with her eyes covered I can tell she's the mystery woman and somehow I couldn't tell this before because this is idiot. But and then he gets so angry at her for it, for like not disclosing this information to him, and it's just like, dude, it's not her fault you're an unobservant idiot. Like it's there's no reason to tell you if she doesn't think that she has any sort of a future with you.
Yeah.
And he just gets so disproportionately angry about that, and I just like that made me like mad at Benedict. In the show he's in this kind of awkward position in the books because you've got like stern Anthony, the older brother, and you've got fun mischievous Colin, the third brother, and then Benedict's just kind of in the middle. I think that he has kind of more of book Colin's properties in the show,
Hmm.
because in the show he is kind of going out and like
Goes
going
to
out
an
in the
orgy.
town. Yeah. um it goes to a big old artist orgy, where who cares what your gender is. And so I mean, like he doesn't really have that much of a character that makes him distinct from any of the other men in this series,
I literally
honestly.
like you said, like at least like, you know, Anthony has that thing, you know, where he's afraid and like, and then Colin has that thing where you know, he definitely you know, he's like younger and fun and we'll talk about that book in a second.
Yeah.
But like, I genuinely, when I try to think of like a defining personality feature of, and I mean, even Gregory, like going down the line to the last Bridgerton male, who is the second to last kid. And so in these books, he's just a child and is very not a character. Like, I can even think of a personality trait for him. I can't think of one for Benedict.
He do art though. He
do
art
art?
Though. Like that's his personality trait, is that he does art and he's afraid to show it. But that's like, I'm sorry, man, that's lame. That doesn't inform who you are on the daily. You know,
he really has. I mean, he is just there to exist while like Sophie's life gets straightened out because of his family. Like that's really what that is.
That I feel like this is definitely the most turbulent for the woman, because Sophie has a time in this book, and she is so sweet. Like, I think that like after everybody's married and everything, she's kind of like the nice sister-in-law. You know, she's the one who's there to just be supportive and kind and smile. And I mean, I'm sure there's like some subservient trauma that needs to be ironed out later in life, but it's just like she's so sweet and kind, and like all of this shit is just thrown at her, and like Benedict is just kind of making it worse, while it's really on the ladies of the Bridgerton family to fix everything. It's always the mom who saves everything. Violet Bridgerton is the hero of this series.
Oh my God.
But that's just
so this is very this is a very Women of Bridgerton book. So we mentioned Colin briefly, so we'll talk about his book. Is number 4. It's called Romancing Mr. Bridgerton. And fans of the show will already be familiar with the Featherington family. And it's already, I think, pretty well. I feel like this is the book that's probably been like the most telegraphed from like even the first season.
But that honestly, that makes it a little bit disappointing to me.
Does
especially well, okay. Penelope in the book is way better than Penelope in the show. Penelope in the show has problems.
So here's my problem. So in the book, it really does feel like, because we haven't really spent time with the Featheringtons really. And all of a sudden, like, this is a book and you're introduced to Penelope, and this is generally, there's been a time jump here a little bit from the rest of the books, of several years. And Colin has been away and he's been traveling, right? And he comes back. And it really is this moment where, like, Penelope has been his friend for a really long time. And then, like, you know, that one moment happens when he goes, "Oh, you're pretty. Let's get married."
It just comes out, and it's like there's not like a slow burning realization. Like it's like either the entire book is the realization or something, because like, I mean, all I can chalk it up to is he liked it when she read his own journal back to him and wasn't and didn't say that he wrote crap. And so then he was just like, oh my God, she doesn't think I'm crap. I'm in love. When it's just there, but there's not even that moment of realization. It's just like kind of sex in the carriage. We're married now. And it's just like, what? There's no, like, because obviously she's been holding the torch for him for ages, and so she's been in love with him for ages. We know this, but then like there's not really like some big strong reason for him to turn around, because she's just behaving the same way she always has and everything like that. It's not like she got like more sassy or something, you know. It's just,
and again, this is a romance trope. I understand this. You know, you're you know, the best friend's sister or like whatever. There's a lot of these where like, you know, you were friends growing up and something happens and you all of a sudden realize that you have like, you're holding a sexual torch for this person. But like this is possibly the most abrupt and like the one that I have most like least belief in. Like at least usually there is some like you said, something where you're
yeah,
like, okay, this is why now. And I was like, Colin fell in love with Penelope because this book needed to happen.
yeah, yeah. And honestly, with the show having been set up the way that they have, it doesn't, I mean, they better do some damage control over the next 2 seasons because where they left it off with Penelope and Colin, first of all, Colin in the show is a shell of his bookshelf.
Yes.
Like we get to know Colin over the first 3 books, and he's just like one of the more enjoyable characters. Like everything's fun, everything's kind of a little bit of a joke to him. He's kind of like the prankster, he's so mischievous and everything like that. And Colin in the show is just milk toast. He is just a sad little piece of white bread just standing there being like, I like you. Oh, I don't like you. I'm friends with you. I'm leaving now. Like that's Colin this show. He has like no personality. Hopefully
I
he gains
wonder,
one when he goes abroad, but
I know, but I'm just like even wondering if they'll even bring that actor back for the second season or if they'll just like leave him off like traveling the continent until
I mean
until
the damage is
season
in the
4.
writing, you know, the actor did fine with what he was
Yeah.
given, but like after reading book Colin, like show Colin is just so sad.
Yeah.
Um
Which is
and
I think even makes their relationship even more frustrating because
yeah.
you're just like, why is this so bland?
And like all Penelope has done in the show so far is been in love with Colin and ruined Colin's chances of marrying somebody who could be like okay because she was jealous. And also, I mean, because she was pregnant, but whatever. Not Penelope, but yeah. So like Penelope does not have
Well,
good social credit in the show right now.
you missed one, which is the massive reveal, spoiler hand for a hot second, that we know in the first series, which is that Lady Whistledown is Penelope.
Yeah.
In the books, you do not learn that until book 4, when that becomes a serious issue for Colin's ego.
Yeah,
So,
this is Colin's chance for rage when he screams at his future spouse because she like goes and submits like her last whistle down papers or whatever, and he yells at her, and then they have a ball and then they have sex and whatever. So um and then but then the him coming around to accept it is sweet, but it would be nice if he didn't, you know, scream at her in the first place.
well, and literally just because, like, so Colin and Penelope, they're both writers in their own way. And like the reason that he's like, oh, I'll marry Penelope is that because, like you said, she reads his journals and tells him that he's a good writer. And so, I mean, it's not even that he's mad that she's been writing all this shit for this long. It's that she's more like popular and her writing is more like popular than his, and he like feels threatened by her celebrity. It's very uncomfortable. I
I
don't
mean,
like it.
he does have or at least says he has like a high level of concern for her as well because, you know, as Whistledown, she's publishing all these salacious rumors about everybody,
Yeah.
everything like that. And so there's a lot of people in society who at that point would really hate her guts. And so he doesn't want her to be ruined because of that too. Um so but yeah, no, it's definitely
Yeah.
an issue for his ego.
I mean, I feel like also one of the reasons that like these two have to get together is also to instigate book 5, which
True.
I will say right now is the book in the series that makes me so so angry.
Yeah.
And if you watch my channel on the reg and you saw my bottom 5 books of last year, I spent a good long time ranting about Eloise's book, To Sir Philip with Love, because I am an anger face about it. And the way that this book handles depression and mental illness is an absolute trash can. I am not happy. But backing it up, what you don't realize essentially during Colin and Penelope's wedding is that Eloise has dipped off to the countryside. And it's kind of alluded to a little bit at the end of that book, but you find out that Eloise has been writing these letters to someone who at one point was married to a distant cousin of hers, I believe. It's always a cousin, I'm telling you.
Because she likes to just kind of write letters all the time. So, and just kind of like send them off willy-nilly to anybody. So his wife, who was her distant cousin, just died, and so she sends a letter to him being like, hey, sorry about this, and then they get into like a letter correspondence.
So Sir Philip, the guy that she's writing to, at one point in one of his letters says like, hey, I need a wife, and like this could we seem to have a decent connection, and instead of responding, asking questions, say, Eloise just heads off to his house, as one does. He does have 2 children already, a pair of twins, who are absolute hellions. And he just likes to like play with plants all day. So Eloise shows up and he's like, because Eloise, she likes to talk.
Why are you here?
Yeah, why are you here? How are you here without a chaperone? What is happening? And it does end up being a little bit of like a reverse Parent Trap situation where the twins are like, oh, we're going to get rid of you the way we have our last like 17 nannies. And I did like that. That was great. Eloise talking to the twins was great.
And like one-upping them.
Yeah, it was great. Like definitely like middle sister, like I can take care of myself kind of thing. But essentially what ends up happening is that, so Philip's first wife tried to kill herself, or like succeeded in the way that she tried to drown herself in a lake. Philip pulled her out of there, but it was cold, and so she catches pneumonia and other sickness and dies. So he has this thing where
she catches morose woman disease.
So he has this thing where he's like, my last marriage was completely in the last 7 years of it, or whatever he says, was completely loveless, because I was totally just like at mercy to her whim. She was always sad. There was nothing I could do. I didn't know what to do. And I said this, and I'll say it again, dealing with someone with severe mental illness takes a toll, and Philip is allowed to have his feelings, but the way that they talk about it hurts me, because essentially it's just like, Marina, his first wife, was at fault. There was something wrong with her. And then in the scene where like Eloise and Philip confess their love, and I sent a screenshot of it to Erica, just like, ugh. There's this thing where he's like, well, you have to promise me you will never be sad, that we will never be unhappy. And that's just like emotional gaslighting, like telling Eloise that because that she can't have feelings.
I mean, if anything, Eloise is more understanding and kind of, I guess kind of represents it a little bit better. There was like one part where she's just like, I think that there are just some people who are just kind of born to just kind of be by themselves. And like, as somebody who is like that, I kind of related with that statement, because she's just like, oh, Marina was always off in the corner with the book. That's just kind of who she was. And so I think that they kind of understand that she was, that was, who she was and how it was to deal with. But I think that Philip just does such a disservice by just like taking all of the wrong lessons from it, and just kind of taking it as, she was, instead of like there were some adjustments that we could have made to like help her be more comfortable. It was just kind of like, okay, well, I guess we'll just kind of alienate ourselves from each other and everything like that. And so when he meets Eloise, who is just so completely on the other end, which, by the way, I didn't like her book representation as much as her show representation on this one.
Show Eloise is better.
Yeah. Well, show Eloise is basically book Hyacinth. So
fair, yes.
And Hyacinth is too young in the show for us to really understand. I think that there's definitely concrete ways that they can make this better in the show when they get to this point, assuming that it does run for this long. Because I mean,
I think they're confirmed through 4 seasons, so we'll at least get Romancing Mr. Bridgerton.
Yeah, I'm wondering too if they'll start kind of doing books simultaneously too. But I mean, I think that
I still stand by the way that he discusses and that he talks about mental illness in this book. Like they cannot put that in the show because I mean
it's completely wrong. Like he is the problem. He is the problem. I think that Eloise for the most part is like okay, but like her agreeing to this stuff and like continuing this relationship with him, not great. But he is without a doubt the problem because he is like, he's also sitting there. He's a big old bummer. He's prone to anger, like he is just unhealthy in so many ways. And then like looks to other people to solve those problems for him.
Yeah.
Rather than understanding that there are issues from within too.
Yeah. And that's how, and you see this too in the way that he deals with his kids, which is that he thinks, he's so convinced that he can't be what they need, that he's totally like alienated himself from his own kids, even though they live in the same house. And Eloise shows up and she's like, all they want to do is spend time with you. And he's like, well, why would they want to do that?
Yeah, it's just like, it's, to me, this one stand, like I was mentioning how, the men and the women in this series don't really stand out from each other all that much. These ones kind of stand out in like not a good way. I think that they're like, I understand how we kind of got from, point A of them meeting to point B of them married and happy. I kind of like, the book takes you through that journey, but to me, it doesn't really make sense. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like something that these characters would do. Because he is so withdrawn and just kind of like inside himself. And Eloise is so outgoing. And I'm not saying that there can't be partnerships like that, but it's just that this one wasn't written well enough to really convince me of it. Because like, it's like, there's like the epilogue where his daughter is basically just like, oh, my parents are all like cutesy and everything like that. And that's not something that you think would happen after reading the book. It doesn't feel right. Like I don't know. It's a weird match that she never really writes in a convincing way to make you feel like,
and just the fact that like worked. Sir Philip's house is like off in the countryside. Yeah. And is like very, very removed from the Bridgerton family, is removed from any kind of society, is removed from any kind of town. And if you know anything about Eloise, like it makes sense, this is how Benedict and Sophie end up living. And that ends up making sense because Sophie is a really big homemaker and, Benedict is an artist. He wants to be off there, but they end up doing that, because Sophie's an illegitimate daughter of an earl. But like to the idea that Eloise could ever have been really happy, like living, with a husband who spends like half his time out in his greenhouse with his plants, like she is just very like, she's an extrovert, first of all. But second of all, she just seems really hungry for like knowledge and things and doing.
It doesn't feel like he challenges her intellectually enough. I don't think they ever have a good scene of banter. And Eloise's relationship is not right unless they have a good scene of banter. Like Hyacinth got plenty of banter and that was great. And like, I'm probably going to be, I'll probably compare Eloise and Hyacinth a good amount because they're very similar. They're at 2 different age ranges. Hyacinth is of course the youngest. But they behave very similarly. Like they're the sharp-witted, strong-willed, kind of go out and make trouble daughters, rather as compared to Daphne and Francesca, who are the kind of sweeter, more conforming daughters. So it just doesn't make sense to have Eloise be paired with this guy who never really does anything and really does not challenge her intellectually. Like it doesn't make sense to have Eloise with somebody who doesn't talk as much as she does. It just bleh.
Or at least doesn't seem to, you know, there are plenty of people who their relationship works because they talk all the time.
Yeah.
And like, so their partner is a good listener, but it's just, that's
Yeah,
not even,
yeah.
he doesn't even
He's
seem
not
to,
even a good listener.
no, it is not good.
No.
But so book 6 is Francesca's story. And I
Mhm.
feel like this was one person who, at the very least, we read this book and didn't have a film version of the character.
I think
Francesca,
she stops by in like one scene.
yeah,
or
no,
something,
Francesca
but
shows up like for a hot minute in the TV show, but like not enough to get a really strong sense of character.
and not even in the previous books either, because she's been living in Scotland for
Yes.
years now.
Yeah. So Francesca has what seemed like one of the more interesting setups.
Mhm.
Because this entire time, you know, Francesca has been married to a Scottish nobility, and she really loved him. They seem to have a decent marriage, but he has died. And so she's like, you know, the dowager, is it Lady of Kilmarin or something? And
Yeah.
because they didn't have kids, the title has passed to her ex-husband's cousin named Michael. Now, when Michael first met Francesca, it was like he knew that was the woman for him, except he met her like the day before she married his cousin. And so
Wasn't it, is it cousin or is it brother?
it's cousin because
It
I
is cousin.
looked
It
it
is
up.
cousin. Yes, it is cousin.
It's
I was,
always
they were,
cousins.
but they were like really close though. Like
Yes,
they
no,
were,
they
they
grew
were
up
the
together.
same age. They grew up together. They're like best
Yeah.
friends.
Yeah.
So it's
And
like kind of
so
a love triangle, but with two of the quarters connected, and then this sad little line just kind of sinking in the distance.
yeah. So, and like Michael was there all the time with them in Scotland. They were fairly inseparable. Francesca really sees him as someone who was like her best friend.
Yeah.
And then, you know, when her husband dies and Michael just like bups off, but they're like kind of thrown back together because they have to get everything, like the whole thing sorted. And also technically, like, Francesca is still kind of under Michael's care because, you know, she's the Dow. So it's like this really weird thing, especially because Michael's not married.
Mm-hmm.
So, and Francesca just really doesn't seem to understand why Michael is having like a really hard time with her being single. And I think this is definitely one where the sexy scenes made me uncomfortable.
Yeah.
For sure. I think because Michael starts to pressure Francesca into having sex with him, first of all. And then like they have sex like once or twice, and Francesca just feels really gross about it. Like she's all over the place, and it's
She's
just
very confused, I think. It's kind of because so since she's built this relationship with him, you know, he's kind of like a brother to her at this point. Like they're really good friends, and so she's kind of like shook that this guy can turn her on. And like all of the scenes are consensual. I will say that Francesca
yes.
does say yes to all of them. They are consensual. Also, honestly, I don't really remember the setup of this. I just remember like they start having sex and then they have a whole bunch of sex and then they eventually get married. Because I mean, like he has like he says like multiple times basically, at least like, you know, in his head, not to her, that he kind of wants to ruin her so that she'll marry him.
Yes.
And
Which is uncomfortable.
yes, And that's kind of like when, I mean, going into these scenes with that kind of intent just automatically just makes them feel wrong,
Yeah,
even
and
if they are
that's the
consensual, you
setup
know?
of their first sex scene. Is Michael has been playing like the dutiful, like quote unquote brother-in-law this entire time. And then he just goes like, no, I think Francesca likes, like, finds me attractive. And if she finds me attractive enough to have sex with me, then she'll have to marry me. And then she'll be like trapped into marriage with me.
I don't
And
that the thing is though too, I'm trying to remember if that's the setup for this one or the next one, because then it has like these two were so similar in that kind of way
yes
that it,
and no, because I feel like in Hyacinth's book is next. I feel like she has more. It is definitely something that Gareth, who is Hyacinth's future husband, thinks. But I do feel like in those sex scenes, I feel more confident in Hyacinth having some agency. Just
I think
because
my memory for the Francesca ones might be wrong. I just remember very clearly the Hyacinth one, Gareth being like, we're gonna go break into this house
Mhm.
and I'm gonna go have sex with her first so that she can't marry anybody else.
He does.
Because
He does say
I
that.
remember you messaging me being like, get this for sex scene, this is bad.
No, and it was the Francesca one that had really keyed me onto that though.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
because at least in Hyacinth's story, there is more buildup, there is more something in Francesca. Like Francesca really is in so much more turmoil because she is still grieving. Like it's not like this setup was not that she was married to some older dude she didn't love.
Yeah.
And this is a marriage that she really grieves the end of. And so trying to think of Michael in a different way, it's like she feels like she's betraying her husband.
Mhm.
She There is just so much more emotional anguish in this one that made it feel more uncomfortable. Whereas Hyacinth, like, yeah, Gareth has some weird intentions, but
Mhm.
Hyacinth is not like having that like emotional like trauma that she's like
Yeah.
slogging through.
Yeah, and yeah, Francesca definitely has that. But then there's also like after the first couple of sex scenes, there's also just a period where they're just and like Francesca is kind of a different case than Hyacinth too because she was widowed. So
Mhm.
she's not expected to be, pure virginal anymore. And so like so there after the first couple of sex scenes, there's just this long period where they just have a bunch of sex, just like fairly regularly. And Michael's just kind of like, so we're gonna get married, and Francesca's just like, I don't know.
Well, and
um
it's so funny that you said that though about like what was the plot of this, because that is genuinely all I remember. And I'm
yes,
thinking about
I can't
Hyacinth.
remember the setup. I
I
can't,
can't
like, you were saying
know.
the setup and I was just like, I can't remember what the setup was because it's just
It's just
then they
that.
had sex and then it was just a long period of when are we gonna get married? I don't know.
Well, and then there's a whole thing that Francesca's infertile.
Yeah.
That was a part of it. And then like in the epilogue, she's surprised not.
Yeah.
Um, so there was that bit that was weird. But no, and it's funny because when you go into Hyacinth's book, which is called It's in His Kiss, and we've kind of already talked about it. Um, this is a heist novel. It is.
Honestly, Hyacinth is one of just the most enjoyable, like in the book, with the books, I would say that Hyacinth is the most enjoyable person to just kind of like the most enjoyable sister to just let go and just kind of watch what happens. Um, I think that Francesca was probably as written probably my next favorite because she also had that layer of sweetness on top of it too, but she did also kind of have a nice mind of her own. Eloise was just so poorly represented in this.
But
But
I feel like you said earlier, like Hyacinth's book is the story you would expect of like show Eloise.
exactly. So she is definitely like the most engaging. Gareth is just kind of, there to be like Hyacinth, but different enough that they can actually like each other. Um,
Yeah,
so
Hyacinth is the
she's the
kind of
most
person
enjoyable.
who, like, she just genuinely doesn't I mean, she does, but she doesn't. She's just so sure of herself that she's like, I don't care if people like me or not. She's just kind of like, you know, rocking around society. Like, this is who I am. Deal
I'm going
with
to speak
it.
my mind. She
Yeah.
gets on very, very well with Lady.
Danbury,
Thank you.
Danforth.
It was like, it starts with a D.
Yeah.
Danbury, who does show up in the show, and I'm very
Yeah.
excited to see their relationship grow. And I mean, yeah, she's
And
just so great.
that's how they meet. Lady Danbury has taken Hyacinth under her wing, and Gareth is related to her in some way.
Yeah,
And she kind of, in her very metally way, kind of pairs them off. And I was like,
because Lady Danbury always knows best.
yes. And I was like,
Always.
okay, so this is gonna be like a, you know, like in a way it was almost like reverse Pretty Women. That's what I thought we were going for. Because like Gareth and Hyacinth were both kind of out of society a little bit. And I was like, oh, this is going to be the story of them. Like,
Gareth hates and is hated by his father.
yes.
So he's kind of like separated out from his father, who is the one who is, because I think, no, that's Lucy. I wasn't sure if this was another illegitimate child situation or what, but no, I'm confusing it with Lucy.
No, he's legit.
Yeah, so they just hate each other. I don't entirely remember why, but Gareth is like out of that household, and I think that's kind of, and so Lady Danbury has been like, I don't know why my son or son-in-law or whatever hates you, so come hang out with me. To him.
But then like all of a sudden there's like stolen diamonds involved, and they're like, you know, breaking into houses in the middle of the night, and it was just,
because it's like Gareth's grandmother's diary or something that says that she hid diamonds in the family home, which is Gareth's dad's house, and
but of
Gareth
course the
doesn't want to
diary
ask
is
his
written
dad
in French, which he doesn't read, but Hyacinth kind of does.
Yeah,
it was
either
just
French or Italian. And then
honestly, after all of the middle books in this series were kind of like, I feel like it kind of went like, I was like, oh, kind of Hyacinth.
Yeah.
Like, surprise.
Yeah. Yeah, for the most part, I think that one was very, I don't think they even had like a scandal to have to get married to, did they? Like, theirs was pretty straightforward. It wasn't like, even Anthony and Kate had this like, I'm sucking bee poison out of your neck, so we now have to get married. I don't think
technically they do have sex before the wedding. I mean, but it doesn't like,
but nobody else knows
become a thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just,
afterwards Hyacinth is just like, so again, those diamonds or what?
Yeah.
And Gareth is just like, what?
Which, I mean, it still doesn't forgive the fact that he was like, okay, I'm gonna lure her over here and sleep with her so she has to marry me. But Hyacinth should be like, okay, that dick was great, but I want a different D, which is called diamonds. But like not for my finger.
And he's just like so shook, like, you have not been stunned by my penis? And it's just like, and she's just like, why are we sitting here? Let's go.
That was, yeah. So I mean, it doesn't forgive his behavior, especially because we're supposed to still like have him want him to be together with her. But her reaction is just great, and him going like, yeah. That was pretty great.
And then I love there's an epilogue moment of Hyacinth's daughter finds the diamonds, and Hyacinth has never given up looking for these diamonds in like all of these however many years they've been married. And then eventually, and like Hyacinth's daughter doesn't know that Hyacinth was looking for these, so she just kind of holds on to him, and she's like, ooh, this pretty bag, look at this. And then like 20 years later, Hyacinth is like yelling something about it, and her daughter's just like, oh, that's what you were looking for. Oh,
I've had them this entire time.
Yeah, and so she like hides them in a very obvious spot where Hyacinth can actually find them. So that's just kind of funny that it's just, there are little insights in some of these epilogues as to how the kids are, like in
Yeah.
like who they've taken after and everything like that, and those can be fun. Yeah, and it's also fun. Also, I'll mention that it's also nice to like they keep in mostly chronological order. There's like some weird chronologicalness around Penelope and Eloise and everything like that, because there is that time jump and everything. We have to get Gregory and Hyacinth up to age so don't feel bad about them having sex. And there's so you get to see how these couples interact with the rest of the family over time, and like how however many years later Eloise reaches out to Kate to talk to Kate as her like favorite sister-in-law or like stuff like that. So that's also just a nice feature of the book, of just like having these Bridgertons together and being this like close-knit family.
Yeah.
And the Pall Mall scene in book 2 is the best.
So the last book is called On the Way to the Wedding, and this is Gregory's story. And Gregory is like, the young Bridgerton boy. Anthony, Benedict, and Colin, they were all very similar age. They kind of grew up together. They also really remember their dad. Gregory is, born after a number of sisters, so he feels very removed from his brothers. And for him, Anthony has been more of the dad that he remembers. And so there's this really fun tension in this book where he just doesn't seem, he's like, he really wants them to be proud of him, but he's also just like, I'm just gonna go like ride my horse. And so that's his defining characteristic. And but he, like, in the reverse of Anthony, truly believes, after watching all of his siblings make these incredible love matches,
which is, it's such a good, honestly, that is such a smart feature to put in there.
Yeah. He genuinely believes that he will just like see a woman across the room and know
and I mean, I don't know if that was the full intent, but he definitely believes in love like so much more, because he gets married after Hyacinth. This is the last book. He is older than Hyacinth, but he still gets married after her. And so he sees all 7 of his siblings happy with loving families, loving partners. And that's, to me, that's kind of a really smart feature, to be like, how would this and I don't know if it's completely like a well thought out thing, or if it's just kind of like, oh, Gregory believes in love. But I think it would have been really smart to have it be 100% intentional, of like, he's had to sit and watch all of his siblings get married. How is that going to affect somebody who's as young as he is? Because he's only like, what, 8 at the beginning of the series or something like that, so this is all very impressionable on him. As very impressionable as all of these events are happening. So it's I don't know why they didn't address it until Gregory, but because Hyacinth is 1 year younger than him.
I think Hyacinth is also just because I am who I am, like, it's going to be really hard to find like a guy, because she's had like what, 7 proposals or whatever it is, and she's just like, all of them were butts. Like, I'm not going to settle for anything less than perfect. And whereas Gregory is like, I'm gonna see her and my heart is gonna know, that's what he's taken out of that. And so Gregory's story is that he's at a party and he sees her, this woman named Hermione, and he's like, this is the one for me. And Hermione has a friend named Lucy. Is it Lucy?
Yeah.
Okay. I was like, am I conflating characters for a second? And Lucy is so sick and tired of every dude in like an 100-mile radius falling for her best friend,
Because
Hermione.
they all come up to her and go, hey, hello, Miss Lucy. Oh, it's such a pleasure to meet you. Introduce me to your friend.
Yeah. So Gregory by default kind of becomes Lucy's choice for Hermione, because at the time Hermione is pining after someone who is her father's secretary and is very just not the right social class, and Lucy thinks it's just a really bad match. But there's this really funny, like, Gregory loves Hermione, but Hermione loves the secretary, and Lucy thinks that Hermione should be with Gregory, so Lucy and Gregory kind of team up to try to get Hermione and Gregory together. Of course, that's already very complicated, and that is not what happens. Erica brought this up when we were reading it, and it's just, I think that you were right, and that the setup would have worked a little bit more interestingly if our POV was not Gregory and Lucy, because I mean, duh.
Yeah, like it would have been so interesting to just have, you know, these two people just fall in love with completely separate people. Yeah. But what I think that this had the least drama for the reader, like it didn't make us feel squicky, I think, besides like Anthony and Kate. But I think that it had the most drama in it, like
this was a soap opera.
It was so over the top dramatic. I mean, like, first of all, you're starting with this big Bridgerton party at their country estate, and like all these fine society people are just like staying over, and like, first of all, how awesome is that you just like have a house that's big enough to just like fit all these society people, and they just stay there for a week, and you just kind of like have parties and walk around town and stuff. Like, sign me up.
Also, one of my favorite things was because the party is being thrown by Kate and Anthony, but Kate. And when Gregory is like, I found her, and Kate's like, Lucy? And he's like, no, Hermione. And she's like, oh,
it'll be Lucy.
It'll be Lucy.
Not like as direct as that, but like she knows.
She knows.
Kate is never wrong. But I mean, so we start with that, and then and then we have like these nice balls and whatever, and then also Lucy is technically kind of engaged to this other guy.
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah.
And then so her brother comes in, like, of course, right as she's falling for Gregory, her brother comes into the picture to be like, hey, we got to go home. Our uncle wants you to get married ASAP. And oh, that's right, she wasn't legitimate, her father just died, so she was raised by the uncle. Okay, that's right.
Right.
And then I think Gareth was illegitimate anyways, because I think
his father thought he was illegitimate, and that's why he hated him. But they looked exactly alike.
No, it was his uncle. I think his mom ended up sleeping with his uncle.
Was that one?
I think that was that one. Anyways. So then
read them and find out.
Yeah. So back to Gregory. So then Lucy's brother comes over to be like, hey, it's time for you to go get married. Gregory's just like, yo, your brother's in love with Hermione, and she's like, what? No. And then they're basically like hooking up in the bushes, so now they have to get married. This is Lucy's brother and Hermione have to get married, and they're,
I was
like,
gonna say, please clarify that, because that sounded weird for a second.
And then so then Lucy is dragged back to go get married. Gregory runs in to stop the wedding. She tells Gregory no, and Gregory's like, marry me instead, and she goes no, and they like drag him out kicking and screaming.
But like the reason that she says no is because her uncle tells her that the family is being blackmailed by the father of the guy she's engaged to, so they have to get married. And so Lucy believes she's doing the family thing
because Lucy's father committed treason in like the Napoleonic eras, which is like super bad, because everybody hates Napoleon in Britain. And So then she ends up getting married to this guy. Turns out he's gay. And he's just like, I don't want any of this. This is just happening around me and I'm eating popcorn and enjoying the show. So then Gregory comes over and he's just like, there's no way that she can get married without me being also getting married with her. And runs over to this like post-wedding party that they're having. And then they're like, trying to find the secrets of what's going on because something doesn't seem right. And then he like ties Lucy to the radiator in the bathroom.
Kidnaps her.
And then her uncle comes up and takes her down to his office and like puts a
actually
gun
kidnaps her.
and is just like, you better go through this marriage or else I'm screwed. And then everyone's just like, oh, you're screwed because you're the one who committed the treason, you're the one being the blackmailed. And then there's like people get shot. It's just such an over the top one. Like all the rest of them are just like drama in the terms of like, oh, I want you to be my mistress, oh no, I can't do that. But then this is just like,
well, Sophie did get thrown in jail, to be fair.
Oh, that's true. Sophie did get thrown in jail because she
was accused of stealing.
That's right. I was just like, punched.
No, I feel like Julia Quinn was like, all right, this is my last Bridgerton. Every single plot line that I have not put in any of the other ones, we're just this bag is stuffed.
There is so much happening in this, but like Lucy and Gregory are just honestly a very sweet, quaint couple because Gregory, he's not as mischievous anymore, was when he was younger, but he's not quite as like mischievous and like pranky as his brothers are. He's just very sweet and well-intentioned. Lucy is smart, but she's also just kind of down to earth. So they were probably like the sweetest couple to watch get together.
Except for the weird thing where he feels the need to tie her to the radiator. That was like weird.
Yeah.
I mean, in a way, I get why he did
or like
it,
a pole in the bathroom
like,
or whatever it is. Yeah.
Whatever it was. I was just like, oh my God, stop. But yeah, so that is the Bridgerton series in like a nutshell. We've already been talking for a really, really long time. So maybe first things first, do you still have your ranking in your head about how the order?
I don't have it in my head, but that's why I wrote it down. Give me a second to pull it up.
I do think, just in terms of themes, I mean, the couples are always going to fight. But I agree that there was a definite trend in these of like the dude really taking the woman to task, which was unfortunate. And
it happens with Simon, Benedict, Colin, Philip, probably Michael at some point. Because I think Michael just kind of started getting really, really frustrated as to, why aren't we married yet if we both have these feelings for each other, which isn't unfair.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean,
I don't necessarily remember Gregory yelling at Lucy. He was just like more like emotionally distraught, like,
no, Gregory was fine.
You love me.
Gregory and Gareth were pretty fine. Yeah. I know I put it in my buddy read section.
You did.
And I can't access the buddy read now.
Oops. I do think though, one of the most uncomfortable things just going through this book was that every single time sex happened, like I felt uneasy. I was just like, and sometimes like the thing with Daphne and Simon, for example, that was just straight up not okay.
Yeah.
And sometimes like I really was like, am I reading into this too much? But I think one of the most unfortunate things about this series is that by the end of it, I had no faith that the sex scene was going to go by without me feeling uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I think that's really unfortunate.
I have my rating. Okay. Go. What is in your number one spot?
The Viscount Who Loved Me.
Same. Yeah. Number 2 for me is On the Way to the Wedding.
I have to say it's In His Kiss. I just enjoyed it.
That's my number 3. What's your number 3?
On the way to the wedding is my number 3. So we
I
just
just swapped it. I think for me, it was that the Gregory Lucy pairing was just so sweet, and that there wasn't really squicky parts in it, because that moment with Gareth is just like not. You had mentioned it. You had like drawn my attention to it before I had read it. So then when I got to it, I was just kind of like looking at these. I was just like, okay, was this looking at the ranking? It was just like, okay, did this make me more uncomfortable than this?
I think I just had so much fun with that book in general.
Yeah.
Like not that On the Way to the Wedding wasn't fun. Like I could very easily put them in the same order you did. But I felt like I had like a genuine fun reading It's in His Kiss, and On the Way to the Wedding, it was fun, but it was like in that like soap opera, like
yeah.
So I mean, neither of those is bad.
All right, number 4. What did you put for number 4?
Oh God, I can't read my own notes. What's your number 4?
My number 4 is Francesca.
Oh.
Because I did I did like the pairing of Francesca and Michaela a lot. I thought that they were very well suited for each other. But
no, my number 4 is An Offer from a Gentleman.
That is my number 5.
Wait, so what's
your number 5?
Well, I think this is where two roads are going to start to diverge in a yellow wood here. Because my number 5 would be Romancing Mr. Bridgerton.
Okay, that's my number 6. So those were, I had like trouble with like trying to figure out where to place those, because so I put Offer from it, like I said, I really liked the pairing of Michael and Francesca. And like there was definitely the issues of I'm gonna have sex and ruin you, but at the same time it was all consensual. Francesca returned the feelings and just like had these conflicted thoughts about it. And I liked seeing their relationship develop, and it was interesting to kind of have that perspective of internal conflict.
I mean, for me, I think the middle is all just a crapshoot. When I just knew that like To Sir Philip with Love was going to be my 8.
Yeah,
like that was like firm.
And honestly, your rage for it I think made me put it in my 8 too. And I put Duke and I as number 7, because to me they were the most boring couple.
They were the most boring, and the one outside of like the depression thing that I can point to, and I was like, that is not great.
That's not
okay. It's not okay. Which is why, I mean, for me, when you go up to 6 is where I have When He Was Wicked, just simply because Romancing Mr. Bridgerton just seemed to fit for me.
Yeah, so I liked Francesca and Michael more. I put Offer from a Gentleman after that because of all the weirdness with Benedict. Because to me that was just like so much more aggressive and just incorrect. And but like at the same time, Benedict and Sophie were, I thought, a very well, like their falling in love process was very sweet, and I really enjoyed reading that, because it's like all this, as he's recuperating from this flu. Because
I think like my top 3 and my bottom 2 are firm. The 3 in the middle, like they're just
and then I put Benedict and Sophie above Colin and Penelope, because Benedict and Sophie had a better written relationship, and Colin and Penelope were just kind of friends that decided to start sleeping together.
Yeah, I mean, I think when all else shakes out, we genuinely have like basically the same ranking. We just made like essential choices, like about what we enjoyed more too about it. But I think otherwise we came up with a very similar decisions.
Yeah. And I think also for me, I was just thinking about when he was wicked some more. Um, I liked the character of Michael a lot for most of it. I agree with you that it definitely got squicky, but like he, I I don't know. I liked the way he was written for most of it.
I think what's
Um,
genuinely bugging me, especially now that we're doing this, is that I genuinely cannot remember the outside plot.
right? It's just it's just all of a sudden they're having sex together and then they get married and that's it.
Like, what was the plot of that?
Like when did I don't even remember like when slash how he proposed, like if he talked to Anthony, I just remember he punched somebody because they were just like, oh, widow's like a virgin but with experience, and then he punched him.
Yeah,
Like that's
yeah.
all I remember.
I think that for me is a problem because I'm like,
That's fair. That is fair. Maybe it should go under 4.
again, I feel like I said, I feel like we're really strong in our top 3 and our bottom 2, and everything
Yeah.
after that is just like given the day and what I feel like
They can be
reading.
shuffled around. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's less of, I think it's less of the specific order and more of there's like a set of 4 groupings.
Yeah.
There, there's Anthony. That's
Yep.
that's just number 1.
Yep.
Gregory and Hyacinth. Francesca, Michael, or Francesca, Colin and Benedict. They're all together, just kind of mingled in there, and then Daphne and Eloise. And like those are the 4 groupings. I think that within those groupings they can be in whatever order.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I can't imagine Sister Philip with Love being anybody's favorite because it's just the couple just does not work. She does not make it, like the writing, she does not make it work.
All right, so if you've made it this far in this video, people watching, and you have conflicting feelings, obviously our feelings are our feelings, but yours are also valid. So just drop a comment down there and let us know. And actually, if you argue with any part of our ranking, you feel like someone should be higher for reasons.
Are Eloise and Philip secretly the perfect couple? Is Daphne not the most boring person? Tell us in the comments below, like we're open to hearing your thoughts. And so it's part of what's fun about reading is being able to share these opinions with people. So
that was what was, I'm not sure necessarily, especially after The Duke and I, if I would have continued the series if you and I weren't making the decision to read them together. And that is what made it fun.
It's funny how it's just kind of like the chart, it just like goes like, hey. Just like go down and down and then I go.
Yeah, I know. Well, and that's that might even be why It's in His Kiss for me ranks above On the Way to the Wedding, because I was like, these books are just going downhill. And then Hyacinth was like, heist novel, and I was like, yes.
And maybe and it also could be that On the Way to the Wedding is higher ranked for me because I read it more recently.
That's true. So did I, but
to me, like I read it most recently, so it like sticks out in my brain more than any of the other ones. But yeah,
this has been really fun. We have decided we are not going to read any more of them.
No, there's like extended family prequels and sequels and
yes. But
as much as I love Violet, I don't. I'm good to take a break from the family.
We are hoping to do something fun for the premiere of season 2, so we'll enjoy that and hope that our hopes are not dashed by the show. But you can look forward.
Can they make Colin more interesting?
Is he even in this? Maybe he's just in Rome.
Is Benedict gonna have more orgies?
Tune in to Netflix in March, guys. But thank you if you made it all the way to the end of this video. Again, leave any of your comments or arguments down there. We're happy to engage. Well, I am, because this is my YouTube channel and Erica can't.
I'm sure she will feed along the comments to me and I will engage I will engage with them in that way.
But thank you to Erica for joining this, and this has been fun, and now we will enjoy not having to read another one of these for a little while. So thanks so much, everybody. Bye.
Bye.